ekam aksharam hrudi nirantaram bhasate swayam likhyate hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham aham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati hrudi vishamanasa swam chinvata majjata pavana chalana rodha atmanishto deham mrunmaya jadatmakam aham buddhirna tasyaspyato naham tattatadhava shukti samaye siddhatma saddha oham bhavayuta kuto radhiye drishtatmanishtatmana soham spurtitaya arunachala shivaha purno vibhati swayam soham spurtitaya arunachala shivaha purno vibhati swayam. Namo Ramana. In this our Friday satsang, I am standing in for Dilip ji. But as usual, we will be reading Bhagavan's Upadesham for 20 minutes, and that shall be followed by self-enquiry practice for 20 minutes, and that shall be followed by talk from our president, Dr. Sarada, and the satsang will conclude with the chanting of Apara Satchit Sukhavari Rashir. We begin this satsang by taking one of the talks at random. We are in talk number 451, 4th February 1938. Mr. S.S. Suryanarayana Shastri, reader in philosophy, Madras University, arrived this night. He had a doubt which he said had been cleared on reading Sharma's commentary on knowledge of the self. The doubt was, How can the world be an imagination or thought? How can the world be an imagination or a thought? Thought is a function of the mind. The mind is located in the brain. The brain is within the skull of a human being, who is only an infinitesimal part of the universe. How then can the universe be contained in the cells of the brain? Let me read it again. The doubt was, how can the world be an imagination or a thought? Thought is a function of the mind. The mind is located in the brain. The brain is within the skull of a human being, who, the human being, is only an infinitesimal part of the universe. How then can the universe be contained in the cells of the brain? Sri Bhagavan answered by saying, so long as the mind is considered to be an entity of the kind described, the doubt will persist. This is the way how some of the modern scientists describe the mind. That mind is a product of neurological activity in the brain. Consciousness is an emergent phenomena. By the actions of the neurons, the existence of neurons precede, and by their action, consciousness is created, is one of the main thought processes that is present in modern science. But not all follow that. There are many modern scientists who have come beyond that. There are many ancient scientists also who have dropped that. But this is how the ajnana is there. The ajnana bhavana, that the mind is a product of the brain, and the brain is within the skull. The skull is within this body. This body is nothing but an infinitesimal small part of the universe. Sri Bhagavan answered, so long as the mind is considered to be an entity of the kind described, the doubt will persist. But what is the mind? Let us consider. The world is seen when the man wakes up from sleep. So Bhagavan, the Rishi, does not take out one object for perception. Takes the whole world. The whole world appears. So the whole universe appears only after the man wakes up from sleep. It comes after the I thought. The head rises up. So the mind has become active. What is the world? It is objects spread out in space. Who comprehends it? The mind. Is not the mind which comprehends space, itself space, akasha. So this comprehension or perception or knowing is more subtler than the object perceived, the object thought about. So the act of perception is subtler than the object of perception, and always the subtler permeates the gross. The subtler is present before the gross. The subtler is present as substrate of the gross. This subtler is present even after the gross is over. Therefore, the subtler always permeates the gross. Therefore, it is also of akasha nature, says Bhagavan. The space is physical ether, bhuta akasha. What we see is bhuta akasha. The mind is mental ether. The mind is chit akasha, mana akasha. We'll come to chit akasha later. The mind is mental ether. which is contained in the transcendental ether, the Chidakasha. The mind is thus the ether principle, the Akasha Tattva. Being the principle of knowledge, Jnana Sattva, it is identified with ether Akasha by metaphysics. Considering it to be ether Akasha, there will be no difficulty in reconciling the apparent contradiction in the question. So now, what is the mind? The mind is the Akasha in which the Bhuta Akasha is present. So the entire universe is now, when we identify with the mind, the entire universe is present in the mind, in the Mana Akasha. This we had discussed in one of the satsangs recently, how the lower dimensions are present as mere shadow in the higher dimensions. This whole universe is present as mere shadow in the Mana Akasha, which is present as mere shadow in the Chidakasha, which is present as mere shadow in self-attention. Self-attention being the highest dimension, all the other dimensions become like shadows. Being the principle of knowledge, Jnana Sattva, it is identified with ether Akasha by metaphysics. Considering it to be ether, there will be no difficulty in reconciling the apparent contradiction in the question. Pure mind, Suddha Manas, is ether Akasha. The dynamic and dull Rajas and Tamas aspects operate as gross objects, etc. So when you are identified with the pure mind inside, it is with the Mana Akasha that you are identifying, not with the individual. It is with the Mana Akasha. There is an interesting study in something called as mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are called as the Gandhi neurons or Dalai Lama neurons or empathy neurons. What they do is very simple, that they are motor neurons like any other neurons, like the motor perceptions or the touch. When they are going on, these neurons, they fire along with other motor neurons. But even when one is not acting, but one is merely seeing another being acting, like taking food, the same neurons fire. So the same neurons fire when we act, the same neurons fire when somebody else acts. These are called as mirror neurons or empathy neurons. And the person who presents them, one of the presents, one Mr. Ramanacentre, he says they are the essential cause of the entire civilization, that how the human learning is on the geometric proportion happens because of mirror neurons. When a tiger has to become a snow tiger, it has to go through thousands of evolutions before the skin develops into a thicker skin. Whereas a human being in a cold climate, it can see the father slay a bear and wear that skin. It will also do the same immediately. It doesn't need thousands of years of evolution to protect itself from cold. That is the function of mirror neurons. One of the findings in mirror neurons is that when the people in whom the arm has been amputated for some severe accident that has occurred, then they develop something called as phantom limb. Because the spirit is used to identifying with the body, the spirit is flowing in the shape of the body. Even after the hand is removed, the spirit doesn't know it. The spirit still flows in the form of a hand. That is called as a phantom limb. And when in those people, when somebody else is touched in their left arm, this person's left arm is actually touched. When that person's left arm is punctured with a syringe or a needle, then the same pain is there in this person's arm. That is, the exact same pain is there. It is as though it is happening in this person's arm. When the skin is there, the message goes to the mind, though the mirror neuron gives the same information, the message goes to the mind, don't worry, It is not you who is being pinched. So don't experience the pain. The presence of skin, it blocks our empathy. Whereas when that skin is not there, we actually feel the same pain as the other person. That, he says, shows that we are all connected in the sensory plane like that, without gap. If the skin is not there, we are not to separate, then the touch of that being is actually felt by this being. There is no spatial gap that happens. Now, how that happens is not very important for us. The point is, we don't identify with this body. When that arm is removed, though the phantom limb is there, the touching of some other person, you feel touched. So in that spirit level, and what we do when we are antarmukha, we de-identify from the body and identify with the manas. There we become the substratic manas which is ever present. So the sensory world is present in the mind. That is why Bhagavan would always ask, are you in the world or is the world in you? Are you in the world or is the world in you? The way to understand this is, as we are going for higher dimensions, the lower dimensions will be consumed by the higher dimension. They will be merely present as shadows. Though they are appearing, they will not affect as good or bad. That is the inner journey. That is why the person has his doubt cleared, that the mind is not something that is trapped in the skull. Mind is the substrate on which the world has been built. But the mind itself is now supported by the Chidakasha, is what Bhagavan is saying. Thus the whole universe is only mental. It says that the Shuddha Manas, it becomes the Akasha Tattva, the Rajas and Tamas becomes the movement and the objects. So when you are Shuddha Manas, when you are in thought-free state, you are the substrate. You are no more this consciousness trapped in the body. You identify in the Akasha already present. It's not that you are gaining the Akasha, you are making the Akasha. No, the Akasha is already present. You merely de-identify from this limitation and identify with that purity. That's why Bhagavan is saying, the world is present in you. Not only that, the world is only a shadow, it is merely mental. As thought objects, they are far more substratic than sensory objects. Then as thought objects also, one should pursue for whom is this thought. Then the thought object nature is also removed in self-attention. The self alone consumes all the earlier dimensions. Again, consider a man who dreams. He goes to sleep in a room with doors closed so that nothing can intrude him while asleep. He closes his eyes when sleeping so that he does not see any object. Yet, when he dreams, he sees a whole region in which people live and move about with himself among them. How did this panorama get in through the doors? It was simply unfolded to him by his brain. Is the sleeper's brain, is it the sleeper's brain or in the brain of the dream individual? It is in the sleeper's brain. How does it hold this vast country in its tiny cells? This must explain the oft-repeated statement that the whole universe is a mere thought or a series of thoughts. That means it's obviously not that consciousness is not in the brain, but the brain, the skull, the body, this entire universe is in that consciousness. That is why self-attention consumes all the earlier dimensions, though they are seen to the self-attentive one, though they are listened to the self-attentive one, they are existing as mere shadows. So that is what Bhagavan does. By practicing self-enquiry, he takes us to the reality, making all other dimensions as shadows which don't have any power to attract or for us to repel from them. Let us sit in practice till 7:40. Revatima, you will set the time for us. You can set for 7:40. Thank you. So, Ramana, I request Sarada to give that talk. Namo Ramanaka.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. With immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, in this part of the satsang, we are meditating on Bhagavan's teachings as encapsulated in Ramana Gita. Ramana Gita is a series of questions posed to Bhagavan and answers from Bhagavan. And this has been compiled in Sanskrit, recorded and compiled in Sanskrit by Gadapati Muni. And he has categorized it into 18 chapters, just like the Bhagavad Gita. So in these 18 chapters, we are on the 7th chapter, which is Atma Vichara, Self-Enquiry. And Bhagavan has defined what is self-enquiry. Bhagavan has told us that self-enquiry is the highest good. It leads to the fruit, which is the fruit of all actions, so to say. And he has also told us that through other paths than self-enquiry, we may get some special experiences, we may get occult powers, we may get various achievements, adbhuta, siddhi, Bhagavan calls them. But ultimately, after attaining all of them, if we want freedom, vicharena eva nirvritaha tah praptopi bhavati ante vicharena eva nirvritaha, only through Atma Vichara. Then Karshni, who is the questioner in this chapter on this subject of self-enquiry, he asks Bhagavan whether engaging in activities other than self-enquiry would be a waste of time to one who is fit to perform, fit to do self-enquiry. And he has already also asked, who is the one fit to do self-enquiry? Bhagavan has told him, one who is free of sensory attachments and attachment to the body, is ready and ripe to do self-enquiry. What about such a one engaging in other activities? Asks Kashni. And Bhagavan says that good activities can be engaged in for one who is a beginner in self-enquiry. So to say, in the sense he says, Arambhina kshiyamana raganam adhikarinam. One whose attachments are waning. One whose attachments have not altogether gone away, but they are waning. Kshiyamana. They are waning. If one's attachments are gradually dropping away, and that means one has already begun the journey in self-enquiry. But Bhagavan says such a one is still a beginner in self-enquiry until the point of detachment becomes so intense that the mind automatically turns back only to the self at all times. The mind does not feel any attraction towards bodily experiences or towards experiences that are connected with the body identity. When the mind no longer feels any attraction towards such, then one may understand that one is fully ripe for self-enquiry. That is what Bhagavan has indicated over here. In fact, we have a sweet song by Sadhu Swami, nicely translated into Kannada as well by Dr. N.S. Lakshminarayana Bhatta. It goes like this. Devana ni kaanabekadare berenanu ni kaanadiru. If you want to see God, don't see anything else. If you want to see God, don't see anything else. Berenanu ni kaanadiru. In another way, Sadhu Swami in his Dhyana Patti he says, Kannai moodi amarந்து கொள் கடவுள் ஒன்றே நினைந்து கொள். Think only of the Supreme. Don't think of anything else. எண்ணிடாமல் எதையுமே. Then he says, don't think of anything. இறைவன் ஒன்றே நினைந்து கொள். Think only of the Supreme One. Think only of the Supreme Self. So, until then, until thoughts are still moving, Nandakumarji would earlier tell us that if we want to plan to go and have dosa in a particular place where dosas are a specialty, or we want to have ice cream in a particular place where ice creams are a specialty, or we want to plan and go somewhere for a couple of days to enjoy maybe the nature over there, maybe even a pilgrimage to that place. But the mind is seeking something. It is moving in a particular direction externally based on the thought that I am this body. So long as that is the case, one needs to put in effort to practice self-enquiry, and such effort most probably may not be continuous. So what does one do with the remaining time? So Bhagavan says, do these good activities because they will keep the mind away from doing anything negative. If you engage in doing japa with the mouth, we will not be speaking ill of anybody at that time. Or if we do japa with the mind, mental dhyana, we may not be thinking of others at that time. And Bhagavan tells us in sadhana, anyar karyat ahandriru, don't be thinking about others. They are right, they are wrong. All these thoughts keep coming to our minds. But if I am given to doing dhyana, doing japa at all times, so if one does not feel one is ready for self-enquiry, or for some reason one is not able to do self-enquiry at all times, then the japa sadhana is very efficacious. So Bhagavan says, keep doing that, give yourself to that. Or if some people, I know some devotee, a lady devotee who spends nearly 5-6 hours in a day making a garland of flowers. And she makes it in the night. She plucks the flowers in the afternoon, keeps them ready. She prepares the garland and she sleeps very, very late in the night so that the garland will be ready early morning. She has been doing this sadhana for a number of years, maybe a decade, 2 decades. Every day she does that. And she puts a lot of her love and affection into that, making of that garland for Bhagavan. At the time when she's doing that, obviously her thoughts are on making that garland. Her thoughts are on making it beautiful because it is an offering to Bhagavan. So negative thoughts will not be there during that period of time. That's what Bhagavan says. If one is engaged in any of these other sadhanas, there will not be any virtuous activity of body, speech, and mind. Destroys the opposite activity of body, speech, and mind, says Bhagavan. If one engages in such activities, which Kashni had asked, Snanam, Sandhya, Japo, Homa, Swadhyayo, Sankirtanam, Tirthayatra, Yagyo, Dhanam. So Bhagavan has said that here, Yat karma sukrutam proktam mano vakkaya sambhavam tattu karmantaram hanti mano vakkaya sambhavam. He said that. And then he talks about the pure ones, the jnanis. How, if the mind is absolutely pure, such activity is done for the pure benefit of the world, and it is not out of fear, because Shastra is telling us this. What will happen if I do not do this parayana today? What will happen if I do not say this prayer today? Such a fear is not there, and it is idam lokopakaraya karmajalam bhavishyati. It is done for the good of others. So Bhagavan is indicating to us two things. One, in the practice of self-enquiry, one may take the support of such activities, and one need not consciously drop any such activity either, because it is for the welfare of the world. Once one is established in the self, all these activities in which the great ones engage, whatever the activities may be, they are for the welfare of the world. But, says Bhagavan, supposing one is established in the self. Karshi is not asked, but Bhagavan is explaining. Supposing one is established steadily in the self already, having pursued self-enquiry, for some time done all the other activities, then one is become established in the self, and then like Bhagavan himself was, he did not engage himself in any activity whatsoever for the first few months. For the first few years almost, when he was in Tiruvannamalai, he had come, he was simply absorbed with the bliss of the self. To what extent did he not observe or follow any injunctions? He did not have a bath. He did not seek any place to go and relieve himself, perhaps. It is said of Jadabharata also that the great one, even there, they are relieving themselves will be wherever they are. They are not bothered even about the cleanliness of the body. Totally unconcerned. Hair is matted, nails are long, curled, body is covered with dust and grime. That's how Mother Aragamma sees Bhagavan. What about all the spiritual, all the religious injunctions? What about all the karma which is said to be the right thing to do? If one asks, Bhagavan says, such failure to do prescribed activities, it does not matter if one is abiding in the self. Because he says, vichara pratikulani na punyani na narashabha kriyamananya sangena bheda bhutyupamardina na chakritani papaya pakvasyatma vimarshana swavimarsho mahat punyam pavananam hi pavanam. Bhagavan says, abidance in the self is mahat punyam. Mahat punyam. Also, he says, pavananam hi pavanam. It is the greatest good for the entire universe. So, a jnani does not have to engage in any activity. He does not have to. Whether he engages or not in activity does not matter. Even if he is simply sitting, abiding in the self, there can be no greater good to himself or to anyone else in the universe. The greatest good, the greatest good. Again and again we find Bhagavan bringing our attention back to this, to the glory of self-abidance through self-enquiry. The glory of self-abidance. He says this is the highest duty. In the 3rd chapter, he had told us it is the highest duty, paramount duty. In the beginning of the 7th chapter, he has told us self-enquiry brings us the best fruit. If it is our own personal search for some some desire, the fulfillment of some desire, the fulfillment of some yearning cannot be better than self-enquiry. Sarva klesha nivritti, he told us over there. Then sarva klesha nivritti, it is absolute freedom. Anything else that we do other than self-enquiry, it may give us some success which is temporary, which passes away. But the total freedom comes from practice of self-enquiry alone. Even if we engage in various other activities for a time being, these activities are not ends in themselves. They may be supports, or rather, they are allowed. That's all Bhagavan says. They will not disturb the self enquiry. Engaging in such activities will not disturb self enquiry. So one can do it. One must be very careful. This is also giving us an understanding that when we have started giving us ourselves to self-enquiry, we must engage or try to engage so long as the option is there or appears to be there. To the extent that the option appears to be there, we should only engage in activities that do not disturb self-enquiry. We may not do self-enquiry all the time, but whatever else we do should not be a disturbance. So that is why Bhagavan has said in this chapter, he has allowed Karshni to ask this question and he has answered that one, they will prevent us from doing something which is unwanted, not meritorious, and they will not disturb the pursuit of self-enquiry. Nandakumarji often shares with us that if an activity is sattvic, again Bhagavan will talk about it later also in this chapter. If an activity is sattvic, it does not leave behind much of a memory, or it does not keep coming back to our mind as a thought. Whereas if an activity is rajasic or tamasic, that keeps coming back to us. It keeps disturbing us in one way or the other, either as a desire or as a worry. It keeps coming back to us. So the sattvic activity will not disturb self-enquiry. It will not arise in our mind during the self-enquiry time. It will not disturb the self-enquiry, says Bhagavan. And if one has continues to engage in such activities after one is steady in self-abidance, it is fine because it is for the welfare of the world alone. Nothing further is to be gained by the one who is abiding in the self. Repeatedly, Bhagavan says in Upadesha Saram and Ulladinarpada Krityamasti kim swasthitim yataha aham kritimyo lasati grasitva kim tasya karyam parishishtamasti. What is left for him to do? Nothing is left. So if he does not do also, pavananam hi pavanam. That is the most purifying activity. And then Bhagavan says that the wise ones appear to be of two kinds. Those who are all the time just abiding in the self, not doing anything else whatsoever in this way where Bhagavan says that they have given up all other activities, they seem to have given up. Drishyate dvividha nishta pakva namadhikarinam tyaga ekanta yogaya parartham chakriyadharaha. So those who are pakvis and also those who are adhikaris. Those who are pakvis means those who are totally right, and those who are adhikaris to self-enquiry, meaning to say those who are ripe sadhakas as well, may appear to fall into two categories. Tyaga ekanta yogaya, for just solitude and communion with the self, they renounce everything else, or they may take up actions parartham cha kriyadharaha. They may take up actions for the welfare of others. This is how we find that we cannot judge the jnani is also something which Bhagavan indicates to us in Uladinarpadu and here as well, that a jnani may appear to be engaged in various activities, but the state of self-abidance is what makes them stand apart from one who is still bound to the body identity. So Bhagavan is giving us here, has given us over here in this part of the chapter on self-inquiry, one, activities which would be good to engage in case we have to engage in activities other than self-inquiry. And he will later tell us that this too has to be done like Ishwararpitam with detachment. So these activities may be engaged in until one is ripe enough to pursue self-inquiry continuously, santatam, and further to abide in the self steadily. So that alone is the goal. No matter what the question that is asked, Bhagavan keeps repeatedly taking us back to the truth that self-abidance is the highest good. That alone is being sought, and self-inquiry is the sure means to abide in the self. Anything else that we may undertake can support self-inquiry, and we should be careful not to allow it to distract us from self-inquiry. Whatever he says is said by his grace, and it is an assurance that he keeps us steady on this path. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramanakara. We conclude the satsang with the chanting of Apara Satchit Sukhavari Rashe. Apara Satchit Sukhavari Rashe. Yasyormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam. Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabiram. Chintavihinam Pridicintayami. Namo Ramanakara.